Bioshock 2 is a much prettier return to Rapture, but this time, instead of starting out as a scrawny hero with a wrench, we are the old nemesis from the first game. We are a big daddy, but not just any big daddy. We are Subject Delta, a prototype model built for one job: bond with a little sister so hard that the plot can physically yank you around by the heart. Your little sister is Eleanor, and the game makes it pretty clear that this is not a sightseeing tour. This is a custody battle in a flooded theme park. The big change is the power fantasy with rules. Dual wielding is now standard, meaning you can fling plasmids and fire weapons at the same time, like Rapture finally admitted that waiting your turn is for people who want to live. You get the drill, you get the rivet gun, and you get a front row seat to the sequel's thesis. The city did not get better, it just got louder and more personal. And hovering over everything is Sophia Lamb, the new philosopher queen of Rapture, who looks at the wreckage of Ryan's ideology and says, "Cute, my turn." So, the 100% run starts the same way every Rapture story starts. Something powerful promises salvation, and your job is to survive long enough to prove it is lying. After Lamb forces us to play a losing game of Russian roulette, Delta wakes up. The resort is ruined. Sinclair starts selling you the plan, and a big sister shows up to remind you this sequel has opinions about our health bar. We wake up in Adonis Luxury Resort, which is what happens when you build a luxury destination at the bottom of the ocean and then act surprised when it becomes an aquarium of regret. 10 years ago, we got put down during the New Year's Eve chaos. Now we are back, because Rapture treats death like a mild inconvenience and trauma like a loyalty program. This level is basically the tutorial, but in the specific Bioshock 2 way, where the tutorial includes a drill, a rivet gun, and the gentle suggestion that everything wants you dead. You learn the rhythm fast, plasmids in one hand, weapons in the other, and the drill is your problem solver when the hallway gets too crowded. Dual wielding is the point now. It's smoother and more aggressive, which is great because splicers are not here for polite conversation. Our real guide is Sinclair. He talks like a man who would sell you flood insurance after the flood. He wants us moving through the resort and deeper into Rapture because Eleanor is out there, and the bond is the plot engine. We're not just looking for a person, we're trying not to die because the story says so. There's no little sister harvest or rescue decision here, and there's no power to the people station to feed our upgrade addiction yet. So it's a clean loop. Loot everything, hack what we can, and treat early fights like a budgeting exercise. Every rivet we waste is a future moment where we are drilling something angry while pretending this was always the plan. And then the big sister arrives. The game introduces her early to set expectations. We're not the scariest thing in the room anymore. This is where we stop role-playing as a tank and start playing like we can bleed. As it is with most games, the beginning we are learning the landscape, what works and what doesn't. Unfortunately, a lot doesn't work in our favor early on. I thought protecting the little sister at the end of Bioshock 1 had its share of difficulties, and that was when we were all juiced up, so protecting the little sister this time around, when we are as strong as a soggy toothpick, is about 10 times harder. After our friendly run-in with the big sister, we're off to the Atlantic Express. We learn the train system, we meet Tannenbaum again, and Sophia Lamb introduces herself by trying to delete us from her new utopia. Atlantic Express is the second level, and it's basically Rapture saying, "Welcome back. Now take your public transportation into a city that hates us." We push into the derelict Atlantic Express depot to meet Brigid Tannenbaum, because she's the only person in this place who can say, "I made a mistake," without immediately making a new one. This level introduces us to the train system, which is the game's polite way of saying backtracking is now official, and we learn the routes whether we like it or not. The train station is wrecked. The posters are still selling a dream, and the whole place feels like a museum exhibit titled Progress, sponsored by Delusion. Our first big quality of life upgrade is the hack tool. In Bioshock 2, hacking is less minigame and more aim, fire, and steal their job. We use it early because cameras and bots start showing up here, and they will happily call security on us for the crime of breathing. We hack the cameras, we hack the bots, and suddenly the station's security is working overtime for our custody quest. We also pick up telekinesis, which is perfect because Rapture is full of loose objects and bad intentions. We throw things, we pull things, we redirect grenades, and we pretend we're not enjoying it. Then Sophia Lamb makes her first real entrance. She's not subtle, she doesn't negotiate. She just declares us a problem and starts moving pieces to end our existence again. Because her utopia has a strict no big daddies policy. We leave Atlantic Express with the rails unlocked. Tannenbaum in play, and the clear understanding is that this sequel is not about escaping Rapture, it's about getting through it with our heart intact and our drill still spinning. Ryan's Amusements is Rapture trying to do family entertainment while actively drowning in its own consequences. We roll in to meet Sinclair, former businessman, current professional, opportunist, and he immediately hits us with the kind of helpful advice that comes with a hidden invoice. There's a giant wall of ice blocking our way forward, so our next step is to go shopping for arson. The park's genius business model is this: pay to enter, pay to leave, pay extra if you want to stop being frozen in place by an ice gate. Luckily, Incinerate is sold inside Ryan's Amusements at the Hall of Future, because nothing says future like setting things on fire to solve infrastructure. We grab it at the Gatherer's Garden, and suddenly the ice problem becomes a brief problem. Then Bioshock 2 flips the script. We're a big daddy, so the game decides our first major rite of passage should be fighting a big daddy. It's like two forklifts arguing in a hallway. We win, we adopt the little sister, and the tutorial wheels come off. Now we're defending her while she harvests Adam, which is the game's way of saying, welcome to parenthood. Please handle 3 waves of violence while your kid does crafts. By the end, we melted the gate, recruited Sinclair as our problem whisperer, and learned the core loop of Bioshock 2. Dual wielding, hack everything with a pulse, and accept that Rapture built a theme park where the exit gift is trauma. Pauper's Drop is what happens when you take a railroad maintenance facility and turn it into a slum, then act shocked when the vibe is despair and a side of rust. The train station is locked down by Sophia Lamb's local governor, Grace Holloway, which means our next objective is political. Find Grace, get the override key. Try not to get morally evaluated by a woman living in a collapsing tenement while we stomp around in a drill suit. Before we do the story work, we do the 100% work because Rapture rewards preparation and punishes vibes. We grab the shotgun from Fishbowl Diner because the local greeting is usually a brute splicer, throwing a chair right at our face. Then we pick up the research camera inside King Pond and officially start the side gig of taking pictures of violence for profit. Our first must-research target is the brute splicer, because the whole thing is clearing wreckage with raw force, and we would like to steal the idea for ourselves. Now we start vacuuming up single-use upgrades like a raccoon in a vending machine alley. Part of the People Number 1 is in Hamilton building on the 2nd floor down the hall from the El Amo Bandito. Number 2 is in Skid Row inside the limbo room behind the stage in a side room. Number 3 is in Sinclair's deluxe tenements, opposite the Vent Shrine hallway, past a connecting hall with a turret because Rapture cannot even give us an upgrade without adding a trap for spice. We spend these on our core workhorse and backup plan. Since we're dying to close range, we get the shotgun fed. Next, we scoop the level's key plasmids and tonic. Hypnotize sits at the limbo room entrance, perfect for turning a fight into a workplace misunderstanding. Hacker's Delight is above the diner across the makeshift bridge because the game wants hacking to be our love language. Short Alarms is in Hamilton's apartments near a desk. Firestorm is on the 2nd floor of the market opposite the pharmacy. Freezing Drill is on the sacrifice table in Sinclair's deluxe tenements, and Keen Observer is waiting in Grace's apartment in the pink bedroom, like the game is rewarding us for trespassing politely. There are also 7 Adam corpses in this level, which is both a resource and a statement about how well Lamb's leadership is going. We harvest them all because 100% means we leave nothing behind except trauma and empty syringes. Finally, we confront Grace Holloway. This is one of the first big morality check moments. We can kill her or spare her, and the game is going to remember. Either way, we get the security override and reopen the path through the station so we can keep chasing Eleanor towards whatever Lamb thinks salvation looks like this week. This brings us to Siren Alley. Siren Alley is what happens when Rapture tries to do nightlife during an active apocalypse. The district is flooded, neon is still blinking, like it has a union protection, and our job is pure infrastructure crime. We need access to the pumping stations so we can drain the next train stop, Dionysus Park, because the train refuses to operate while the station is full of ocean. The city really said public transit, but make it nautical. Of course, Lamb does not just let us do maintenance. She sends Father Simon Wales, her fiercest lieutenant, to minister at us aggressively. He runs his own flock of the Rapture family, which is basically a cult that uses the word family the way spiders use the word home. Warm invitation, hidden teeth. Before we do any pumping, we do the 100% sweeps. First, we grab the spear gun. It's the perfect weapon for a flooded district because nothing says underwater confidence like firing a harpoon at someone who's already having a bad decade. Second, we cache our upgrades. Power to the People Station 1 is at the Mermaid Lounge, tucked in a small room with a hole in the ceiling, because even our upgrades live in sketchy corners. Station 2 is right before Pumping Station 5 in Lamb's office, which is very considerate of her, in the same way it's considerate to leave a snack out for a bear. You hope it's not going to eat it. We spend these on our primary weapons, and we move on. Third, we harvest the economy. There are 3 sea slugs and 7 atom corpses here. That is a lot of free atoms sitting around the city that claims it wants order. We take all of it because 100% means we do not leave value on the floor, even if the floor is underwater and probably haunted. Now we push to Pumping Station 5, fighting through spider splicers that cling to ceilings like they are auditioning for a horror movie, mini turrets that pop up like angry lunchboxes, and eventually the Rumbler Big Daddy, who lobs explosives at us because subtlety is illegal in Siren Alley. We make the call on Daniel and Simon Wales. We hit the pumps, and Dionysus Park starts draining. The water goes down, the train line opens, and we move on, leaving Siren Alley as we found it, flooded, violent, and still somehow trying to sell us a good time. Dionysus Park is Sophia Lamb's private retreat, which means it's an exploration of art and culture, curated by a woman who thinks mass brainwashing is a community service. The place is gorgeous in a drowning museum kind of way. Paintings, galleries, a cinema, and the constant background ambience of violence, because Rapture does not believe in quiet appreciation. We're only passing through to reach Fontaine Futuristics and Eleanor, but the game assigns us a new gatekeeper, Stanley Poole. He's the type of man who would lock the subway gates and then act like he's doing public safety. He refuses to let us access the Atlantic Express until we rid the park of all little sisters, so our main quest becomes a cleanup contract, signed in blood and atom. This is where 100% actually helps us. We're going to clear the little sisters anyway, so Stanley's big demand lands like a toddler negotiating bedtime. Fine, we do the route efficiently, clear each sister in the district, and treat every Big Daddy escort path like an ambush lane. Dionysus Park has a lot of tight corners and sightline tricks, so we hack what we can and fight where the geometry does not betray us. While we're sweeping, we harvest the atom bodies. There are 11 in total, and the park practically organizes them like an exhibit. Cohen's collection alone has 4 split between the main collection room, Lamb's garden, the carousel, and basement storage. Triton Cinema has 2, 1 downstairs and 1 up in the balcony. Imago Fine Arts has 1. J. Fishery Gallery has 3, 1 in the piano bar and 2 in the main gallery area. Then there's 1 more in the large gallery room between the Atlantic Express station and the piano bar. We take them all because we're not leaving currency lying around in a city built on addiction. Then we cash in on our upgrades. 1 power to the People Station is behind the locked basement storage door with a code of 1080, and the other is right on the path to the train, which is the game's way of saying we should upgrade now because the next stretch will hurt. Right before the Atlantic Express station, we pick up the launcher because we've been touring long enough, and the sequel wants us back on our industrial demonic arc. Then Stanley finally opens the way, and we could kill him if we wanted, but since I'm going for the good ending, we left him alive. We ride out towards Fontaine Futuristics, 1 step closer to Eleanor and 1 step deeper into Lamb's idea of culture. In Fontaine's Futuristics, our first checklist item is non-negotiable. Before the floodgate, Eleanor gives us damage research, and it cannot be missed. It's the game's version of a care package, except the snacks are combat multipliers. Then the level turns into a light switch theater. We push into the second area and have to bring the power online because nothing says cutting-edge genetics lab like broken infrastructure we have to fix by hand. Once the lights are on, we can access the second power to the people station in the holding cells area bottom level. The catch is we open it by hacking a panel through a broken window, which feels less like hacking and more like breaking into our own upgrade closet. We also grab the first power to the people station once the locked security room becomes accessible. 2 upgrades in 1 level is the game politely warning us that the fights are about to get worse. We spend them on our most used weapons. Now we look like professionals. There are 12 atom bodies here. We harvest every one of them because Fontaine's built an empire on scarcity and we're not honoring his business model. We also collect 2 sea slugs during the underwater walks, one in a round scaffolding section on the right walk and one on the second walk after dropping down a hole up the stairs to the right. Then we clear up the tonics. Power Drill 2 in the Plasmid Laboratory, Careful Hacker 2 in the theater behind a coded door, and Vending Expert 2 comes chasing down the unstable teleport plasmid, which is basically the game daring us to play tag with science. Finally, the tone shifts. Alpha series begin appearing, which is Rapture's way of reminding us that we're not unique, we're a product line. And as we press deeper, we hit choice points tied to Gilbert Alexander and Mark Meltzer because the sequel loves asking moral questions right after it hands us a bigger gun. This gets us to Outer Persephone. Outer Persephone is where Rapture finally stopped pretending it is a city and admits it's a prison, literally. We take the hidden elevator down from Fontaine Futuristics and step into the outermost area of Persephone, Lamb's personal correctional facility and control center. The first hallway is pure mood. Barnacles on the walls, gurneys everywhere, old files scattered like the building itself filed for divorce. Then we cross the long glass tunnel over the abyss because nothing says rehabilitation like a science walk over a certain doom. Eleanor contacts us during the crossing, and for a few seconds it feels like we're about to get a clean rescue mission. Then Lamb reminds us that she wrote the syllabus. Lamb delivers her big power move, and she tries to sever the bond by smothering Eleanor long enough to break it. It is the kind of villain play that makes us stop laughing for a beat and then immediately start drilling again out of spite. We get dragged into the examination rooms, restrained, and the game pulls its favorite trick. It makes the horror feel beautiful by forcing us to see through a little sister's eyes. The place becomes a glowing fantasy, like a prison is a palace and the torture is just interior design. Here's the funny part. While we're controlling the little sister, we get 3 scripted atom harvests from bodies, and splicers don't attack us during these. The city is basically saying, sure, take your free money, little angel, no problems, no questions. It's the gentlest crime scene you'll ever look at in Rapture. Then Eleanor snaps the level back into reality. She wakes up in her big sister suit, shreds 2 brute splicers, cuts us free, and gives us Summon Eleanor, a plasmid that lets you call her into fights like the most aggressive family group project ever created. Before we leave, we cache the single power to the people's upgrade that sits right on the main path in Outer Persephone, and at the end of the long glass tunnel stretch, spend it on whatever we need most. And then we're on to the final exam, Inner Persephone. This is where the sequel cashes its checks. We're in the final level, deep in Persephone, and the tone is pure endgame. No pretty atriums, no more theater lighting, just prison corridors, locked wings, and the feeling that Lamb built this place to keep people in and keep secrets quieter. The first priority is upgrades because we're about to be asked to fight our way through the harshest splicer variants the game has. Elite Brute Splicers show up here, which is the normal Brute Splicer, but with more health, more anger, and fewer reasons to stop. So, we cash our last 2 Power to the People upgrade stations like we're spending the last coins at an arcade before the lights shut off. Power to the People number 1 is in the holding wing in the back of the room where Sinclair is being held captive on the left side. We do not leave that room without spending it, because Sinclair has carried our run on his sales pitch voice and we owe him at least the courtesy of improved damage per second. Then we face the Sinclair twist. Lamb turned him into Subject Omega because her whole ideology is that people are tools for the greater good, and she treats friends the way Rapture treats vending machines. If we've been paying any attention, this is the end of Sinclair's arc and the moment that forces a choice in how we handle him. Power to the People number 2 is in the infirmary wing, just after Ward B inside the locked room with a heat-seeking RPG turret. The turret is not decoration. It's the game daring us to walk in like we forgot how corners work. We hack and disable it, grab the upgrade, and come back out with our weapons fully tuned for the last push. From there, it's the final match. Eleanor is with us. We summon her as our emergency action button, and the end sequence becomes the scoreboard for every moral choice we made across the whole run. We did not just build a loadout, we built a legacy, and inner Persephone makes us watch it play out. So grand total to 100% Bioshock 2, with every little sister handled, every power to the people upgrade used, and every key weapon and plasmid tonic grabbed, every atom, body, and sea slug worth taking resulted in 38 deaths. The absurd part is that a number of these deaths were not from big sisters or elite brutes or some heroic last stand. They are from us getting greedy in a vending machine hallway, forgetting a turret was heat-seeking, or thinking we could tank one more hit because we're a big daddy. Spoiler, we're still extremely killable. We just look industrial. Big picture, Bioshock 2 feels smoother and meaner than the first. Dual wielding turns us into a walking problem solver. Research rewards us for doing what we're going to do anyway, and the drill is basically a counseling tool for splicers. But the game hits harder emotionally because the stakes are not abstract. We're not escaping Rapture. We're fighting for Eleanor, and every choice is basically parenting under pressure with gunfire. And the ending lands the way a good sequel should. Sophia Lamb tries to turn ideals into weaponry, Sinclair pays the price for getting involved with philosophy people, and Eleanor becomes the receipt of everything we did. The final scene is not just who wins, it is what kind of person we taught her to be while we were ripping across the city. The final verdict is Bioshock 2 is a prettier return to Rapture with a nastier combat loop, but the real upgrade is the story framing. The first game asked if we had free will, the second asks what we are going to do with it when we have it and someone we love is on the line. After our full 100% run, the only thing we are truly certain of, Rapture does not make monsters. It just gives them a drill and asks them to choose. The real question is, how does this measure up to the rest of the series? Subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with a friend so you can tune back next week where I take on Bioshock Infinite, where instead of fighting the risk of drowning, we fight the risk of falling out of the sky, hoping we can learn to fly before we hit the ground.